Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Professor Matthew. I think it flows through nicely. Like Professor Virginia mentioned a lot of things about information asymmetry, and so forth. Our keynote speaker talked about all of the intellectual property and the Sustainable Development Goals. So I am here to talk about on that topic. The benefits of job automation are not likely to be shared equally. It's a little bit specific topic, narrow focused rather than broader sustainable development goals or so forth. But what I found is I found that it might be a very interesting topic for the audience here, because the intrinsic link between the developments in the digital economy and also what is happening in terms of job and income equality in any economy or at the global level as well. So I am here from Chair in Digital Economy. We are a collaborative industry, academia, research group. We have some industry partners, founding industry partner. We are based on QUT. We have a chair, but we essentially a group of researchers working in the area of digital economy. We have a lot of collaboration with different faculties and schools here, especially School of Law. So basically, taking the perspective from the Sustainable Development Goals of UN, the 17 goals that articulate different dimension of sustainable development, and as we know that the raised inequality is one of the important aspects. But what I see that these are really important and they are really interlinked with each other. From the context of digital economy, because digital economy, I think I should actually talk a little bit on the digital economy, the way we talk about digital economy. So digital economy is not something different from what we have done so far or what is the traditional economy, but digital economy is something when new forms of technology and new forms of business models are, and new forms of new ways of working, living, and thinking are emerging in the economy. So this is by digital we mean that not only technology but also the other aspects of the economy, like changing in business, changing in the way people work, the way people think as well. So this is really broad. So in that way it links quite clearly, because now we see a lot of new technological trends are emerging, and how these trends are impacting, these new changes are impacting the sustainable development goals, or what evidence we can actually see at global level or at various country levels. So this is the essence of the paper. So in this paper, what we did, we recently published a piece. This is a paper under development, but we recently published a piece in the conversation where we found that so this is the paper myself and Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz and Rowena Barrett from Chair in Digital Economy and School of Management. So what we found in that paper is that we see that a lot of companies are adopting new technologies. Like we know that the disruptive information technology and intelligence stuffs, smart technologies are emerging. And these technologies, we see that a lot of businesses are adopting these technologies. So these technologies are influencing the performance of the businesses. That's the premise of the analysis. But what is happening in terms of job, in terms of wages? So this is the essence of this paper. So the technology is automating certain jobs, and there are displacement of some jobs as well. But what is more profound, we found that even though a lot of businesses, they are gaining a lot from their technology investment, the profit they make from this technology investment is not going to the workers. So this is going to the certain group of employees or maybe some group that that is creating another forms of a new types of inequality in the economy. So there is a potential that unless these issues, the policy issues, are not taken over by government or international level, some of the goals in Millennium Development Sustainable Development Goals, what are they are may not be made properly because there are disruption in the digital economy. So this is the time we seriously think about that. So I put here two very important quotes from two Nobel laureates. One is that the probably you know the name of Paul Krugman, American economist. Both of them actually. So the Paul Krugman said, productivity is not everything, but in the long run, it is almost everything. A country's ability to improve its standard of living over time depends on almost entirely on its ability to raise the output per worker. So it is a long-term phenomena, productivity itself, but in the long run, it reflects the well-being of country's population. And now coming to another very influential economic theorist and the economist Professor Robert Solow. He wrote in New York Times in 1987, you can see the computer age everywhere but not in the productivity statistics. So the statement here from the perspective of advances in digital economy, we know that the phase of the digital economy started sometimes in 1970s or 1980s, but what happened is that in American economy until this period of time, until 1980s, end of 1980s, no visible impact was found in terms in their productivity or national aggregate. So that's one of the findings from Robert Solow, and Robert Solow made that statement very, very explicit. What happened is that at that time the broader implication of the digital productivity was not discussed that much. The reason is that the academic and the policymaker, they are really confused about how to gather more benefits from the technology itself. So that was the pain point at that period of time. But now, like after a few years, starting from 2000s, we can see that the effect of automation or technology is actually boosting productivity in many countries of the world. So it is expected that in Australia that the automation will make 2.2 trillion boost in productivity in Australia between 2015 and 2030. So this is one of the analysis for alpha beta. So it is also true for many other countries. Like in USA, we can see the sustained productivity growth. In many other countries, OECD, even in many advanced countries, when there were concern of slowdown of productivity in 1980s or even early 1990s, now we see that there is a close link between the investment in technology and adoption of technology to the improvement of productivity. So it goes to the fundamental question whether these productivity gains are going to the citizens of the country, going to the citizens of the country, going to the population. So that's the essence of the paper. So this issue still remains questionable. There is not that much research in that area as yet. So the researchers are exploring this at this moment. But some of the very influential researches are in progress. So this is one of the paper came in Australia, that there are some other concerns as well. We know that while automation, robotics, and a lot of artificial technologies are adopted by the businesses and governments, we see that there are threats in the economy. Like there might be some of the jobs might be displaced. So one of the estimation made by CIDA in 2015 in Australia, they found that some of the 40% of all jobs are predicted to disappear with automation in Australia in next 10 to 15 years. Okay, so by 2030, they assume that there might be a big chance in the ways in the job market in Australia. So that's one of the main funding. So the jobs, at the same time, we know the jobs are being created, but the jobs we know that most likely to go, those can be easily codified, those who are repetitive, simple, structure, routine. So we know about the car manufacturing industry in Australia is almost gone. So we have started to see the impact of these trends in actual economy, and this is something a major concern for the economy as a whole. So, but what? So this is another concern. So the displacements of the job, but there is growing divergence. That is another kind of concern, is that we see that the growing divergence between productivity and the growth of OS. So this is one of the diagram from USA. Growth. It shows the growth of real hourly compensation for production, and also the productivity between 1948 to 2011. So it's a really long trend. And what we see here, a de-link of the relationship somewhere in 1990s, but it became very profound from 2000. So between 2000 and 2011, we see that there is a big de-link or big divergence between the relationship, but historically it has been very aligned, and it should be the case. Like for an economy, when the economic market and the institutions work properly, policy work properly, the wage growth should go hand by hand with productivity growth, but it is not the case. So this is one of the alarming scenario. This is statistics from some other countries. We see that in Australia, so this shows the amount by which labor share of productivity gains declined. So countries achieving productivity gains in dollar, but the labor share decline over time. So this shows the decline between 1995 to 2014. This is from OECD data. They have some other countries as well. So for Australia, we see that the labor share declined by 5.7 percentage point, in Canada 5.3, United States 4, Germany 1.6, and so forth. So this is a trend for many other OECD countries as well, where we can see that the gains from automation that is reflecting to the productivity, but not reflecting to the OS of the employees. So that's the, and there is a clear de-link between the labor share and the capital share to productivity. So this is the scenario that since 1970s, across most OECD countries, the share of income going to wages have been decreasing, and the share going to capital has been increasing. And this has been intensified in this very recent years, when businesses are investing millions and billions of dollars in their automation process. So in Australia, we can see this is 5.7%, as we have seen in the diagram. So in Australia, so we dig deeper a little bit in terms of Australia, and what we found that this is even profound in major sectors of the economy. So in most sector of the economy, average productivity growth are much higher than the average growth in Australia during 2012 to 2016. So this is a diagram which shows the average productivity growth as a percentage of OS growth between 2012 and 2016. This is a very recent data, and we can see that in most of the sectors, the share is higher the percent is higher. This means that it's more than 100, means that more than 1 means it actually going higher than the OS growth. So that's the scenario for most sector in Australia. So the profit arising from productivity gains have been going to capital rather than labor, reflecting growing income equality in the society in general. So where these profits are going? So this is another findings, another statistics we found, that the CEO compensation has been growing much faster than the average worker wage. So if we see these two ratios, 21 and 27:1 in 2016, 21 the scenario in 1965. Now you understand how serious the problem is the difference is almost more than 10 times higher. Okay, so it reflects that in the changes in digital economy, what is happening, the bargaining power of some groups of employees have increased drastically, and it led to massive amount of profit going to the salary of this particular group, especially CEO. So therefore we expect that demand for typical skilled worker will remain, maybe who can bargain, who has more managerial power or so forth, managerial skills or technical skills or so forth. But what we see that we are not confident that will increasingly lead to an increase in compensation for that worker. So we see that the demand for skilled worker, like often we are talking about STEM, technology education, maths education, engineering education and so forth, or even managerial education. But what is happening, even though we are focusing much on these types of education, ultimately these people maybe get employed, but the profit gains from the productivity from the automation may not go to that particular group. So this is another kind of the third step of divergence. So we see why is that. So by economic theory, from the lens of economic theory, we try to understand that. We see that the market mechanism actually prevails here. So when real worker they produce more, it means that they have more bargaining power. Now the robots, the machines can produce, the autonomous vehicle can replace the manual vehicles. So what is going on? The bargaining power of the employees are actually decreasing, the general employees. Even though they have a lot of skill set, the bargaining power is low. So the bargaining power is the key to get the better remuneration in the digital economy. That might be the thing. So it is very unclear that whether individual worker, even though they have that required qualification, that required skill set, whether they will get better remuneration, that we are not very confident in that aspect. So again, that coming to the fundamental problem of economic incentive, because now robots can work 24 hours. The automated vehicles can drive like 1,000 miles or kilometers. So what is happening is that there is no incentive for the owners to distribute the profit to the general employees. So this is happening in pharmaceutical industry as well. We have seen a lot of automation in pharmaceutical industry in Australia, but what is happening, they still have low starting salary according to this is reflected in a recent government report. This is another dimension. This is the ways the gender diversity. Again, we can see that the female dominated sectors like Healthcare and social assistance and education training, these are the female dominated sectors. But what is happening, the growth of the unemployment rate is actually growing in some sectors where more automation take place. So they replace the job, mostly the jobs previously done by a man that have been started to replaced with the machine, and that's why the unemployment rate has increased in many man-dominated sector as well. So that's one of the scenario. So that's our conclusion, that in economics we often say that a rising tide lifts all boats, but essentially this is not the case when we see changes in the digital economy. Thank you very much.